There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when they realize that something about their existence feels off, like they've been placed in a world that was never meant to accept them. It begins as a subtle awareness, a gut feeling that refuses to be ignored. At first, you assume it's just a phase, a trick of the mind, or simply overthinking. But the signs keep appearing more frequently, more vividly, until the pattern becomes undeniable. You start to notice that life moves differently for you. You face setbacks that don't make sense, obstacles that appear out of nowhere, and an unusual level of resistance at every turn. Opportunities that should have been yours mysteriously slip away. People you trusted turn cold. It's as if an invisible force is working against you, ensuring that no matter what you do, you never truly break free. At first, you try to rationalize it. Maybe it's just bad luck. Maybe you're just not trying hard enough. Maybe life is simply unfair. But then, something deeper within you stirs, an ancient awareness that whispers a truth you were never meant to uncover. You were never meant to succeed under this system. The moment you began to awaken, you became a problem, and problems must be dealt with. Society, governments, and powerful institutions have a vested interest in ensuring that people like you never rise, never gain too much influence, and never disrupt the carefully controlled narrative they've constructed. This is not just paranoia. This is an engineered reality designed to keep the most powerful individuals, people like you, hidden in the shadows. From the moment you were born, the system identified you. It may not have been obvious, but something about you stood out. Maybe it was the way you thought differently, questioned everything, or saw the world in a way others did not. Maybe it was your energy, your presence, your intuition. Whatever it was, they noticed. And once they noticed, they began their work. They couldn't outright eliminate you. That would be too obvious. Instead, they had to make sure you disappeared in a way that no one would ever suspect. They had to ensure that you erased yourself. Their tactics are subtle, yet devastating. They isolate you, making sure you never feel truly connected to those around you. Friends betray you without reason. Family members misunderstand you. Relationships crumble before they even have a chance to bloom. And when you turn to society for validation, for guidance, for a place to belong, you find only rejection. They place you in a cycle of frustration, ensuring that every time you try to rise, you are met with resistance so relentless that most people would break under the pressure. But here's what they don't understand. Chosen ones are not like most people. You see, they were hoping you would give up. They wanted you to reach a point where you no longer believed in yourself, where the isolation and the rejection became too much to bear. They wanted you to look around at a world that did not embrace you and accept their biggest lie, that you were never meant to belong. They hoped that over time, you would silence yourself, dim your own light, and voluntarily step into the shadows where you could be forgotten. Because the greatest weapon against a chosen one is not physical destruction, but spiritual and psychological erasure. But despite everything they have done, despite the years of struggle, pain, and confusion, you are still here. And that fact alone terrifies them more than anything else. They wanted you erased, yet you exist. They wanted you silent, yet you seek the truth. They wanted you broken, yet something inside you refuses to shatter. And now, as you stand on the precipice of full awareness, something inside you begins to awaken. A knowing, a realization, a memory of who you truly are. Governments, secret institutions, and those who control the systems of this world have always known about the existence of chosen ones. They have always feared what would happen if people like you ever woke up to their true potential. History has shown that revolutions, shifts in consciousness, and the destruction of oppressive regimes never started with the masses. They started with one individual, one mind that refused to be controlled, one soul that carried the power to ignite change. That is why they fear you, not because of what you are now, but because of what you are becoming. Imagine, for a moment, what would happen if all the chosen ones in the world stopped doubting themselves, if they stopped believing the lies, stopped accepting the limitations placed upon them, and instead stepped fully into their power. The world as we know it would change overnight. The illusion would shatter. The control they have maintained for centuries would begin to crumble. That is why they work so hard to keep you asleep. That is why they make sure that even when you begin to wake up, you are met with so much resistance that you question whether the fight is even worth it. But here's where they made a mistake. In their arrogance, in their belief that their tactics would be enough to suppress you, they underestimated one crucial thing: the resilience of the chosen ones. They didn't account for the fact that the very struggles they placed in your path would become the fire that forges you, that the betrayals, the rejections, the loneliness, and the isolation would not break you, but strengthen you. They didn't expect you to learn from your pain, to grow from your losses, to evolve into something even greater than they feared. You were never meant to fit into their system because you were destined to rise above it. They tried to make you disappear, but instead, they forced you to see beyond the illusion. They wanted you to doubt yourself, but instead, they pushed you into remembering who you truly are. And now, there is no turning back, because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it, and that is where their plan failed. No matter how much they tried to erase you, spiritually, emotionally, socially, you are still here. The very fact that you are reading this, listening to this, engaging with this message, means they did not succeed. And now, they are out of options. Because once a chosen one fully awakens, they become unstoppable. The system can only control those who do not understand its rules. But you are beyond their control, and that is why they fear you. Because a chosen one who knows their power is a force that cannot be contained. This is just the beginning, because once you awaken, the next step is inevitable. You are no longer just an observer of this reality. You are a creator, and nothing they do will ever be enough to change that. If you have ever felt like the world is working against you, like unseen forces are pulling the strings of your life in ways you can't explain, you're not imagining things. This isn't just bad luck, coincidence, or random misfortune. What you are experiencing is the result of a silent war, a war that has been waged against chosen ones for generations. But unlike traditional warfare, this battle is fought in the shadows. There are no soldiers in uniform, no obvious battlefields, and no declarations of conflict. Instead, it is a war of the mind, the spirit, and the very fabric of your reality. You were never supposed to know about it. The entire system was designed to keep you asleep, to keep you questioning yourself, doubting your instincts, and accepting the illusion that your struggles are merely personal problems, rather than part of a larger calculated attack. But once you start connecting the dots, Once you see through the deception, everything changes. Think about your life. Think about the moments when you felt most defeated, the times when you were on the verge of a breakthrough, only for everything to mysteriously fall apart. The jobs that slipped through your fingers, the relationships that ended before they even had a chance, the people who betrayed you for no apparent reason, the opportunities that vanished just when you thought you were finally moving forward. These were not coincidences. These were attacks, and they were never random. They know who you are. They have known from the beginning. And because they cannot simply remove you without raising suspicion, they use other methods, subtle, psychological, spiritual methods, to keep you from ever realizing your full potential. One of their primary tactics is isolation. They ensure that from an early age, you feel different. You may have grown up feeling like an outsider, as if you never truly fit in anywhere. You may have tried to connect with others, only to find that the deeper parts of you were never truly understood. This isn't an accident. When chosen ones are young, they are still vulnerable, still searching for validation, still hoping to find where they belong. The system exploits this, making sure that no matter where you turn, you are met with resistance, rejection, and confusion. Why? Because isolation weakens people. A person who feels alone is easier to manipulate. They are more likely to doubt themselves, to second-guess their own instincts. And once you start questioning yourself, you become your own worst enemy. They don't have to destroy you, because you start doing it for them. But isolation is just the beginning. Once they have successfully made you feel disconnected from the world around you, they introduce the next phase: manipulation and gaslighting. Have you ever noticed how, whenever you start talking about deeper truths, things that expose the flaws in society, the illusions of power, or the lies you've been told, people immediately try to shut you down? They call you crazy. They tell you you're overthinking. They label you a conspiracy theorist, an overanalyzer, a person who just needs to relax. This is not an accident. This is conditioning. The system has trained the masses to attack those who question reality, making sure that whenever a chosen one begins to wake up, they are met with ridicule instead of curiosity, because the greatest threat to their control is awareness. Once you see the system, you can no longer be controlled by it. Once you understand the game being played, you can no longer be manipulated like the rest. So, their goal is to keep you questioning yourself, to make you believe that your insights, your intuition, your understanding of reality is flawed. They want you to doubt your own mind, because a chosen one who does not trust themselves is a chosen one who remains powerless. And then there's the systemic attacks. These come in many forms: financial struggles, sudden, inexplicable health issues, legal troubles, a never-ending cycle of stress, problems, and responsibilities that keep you so distracted, so exhausted, that you don't have time to think, to reflect, to truly awaken. Look around you. Notice how society is structured, the way people are kept constantly busy, constantly worried, constantly afraid. Whether it's money, health, relationships, politics, war, or social chaos, there is always something designed to keep you in a state of anxiety. Why? Because an anxious mind is a controlled mind. A person who is always worried about paying bills, about their future, about the next crisis, does not have the energy to question the deeper truths of reality. And that is exactly how they keep you distracted from who you really are. But here's where their plan begins to fail. Because unlike the masses who accept this reality without question, you are different. Despite everything they have done, despite the attacks, the isolation, the manipulation, you are still here. You are still questioning. You are still searching for the truth. And that alone makes you a threat. They never expected you to fight back. They never thought that after all the suffering, all the setbacks, all the pain, you would still rise. But that is the nature of the chosen ones. They are not like the rest. They are forged in fire. Think about it. Every struggle you faced, every loss, every betrayal, it didn't break you. It transformed you. It sharpened your mind, strengthened your spirit, and gave you something most people never develop: resilience. The very same forces that were meant to destroy you have instead prepared you for something greater. And now, the system is running out of options. You see, the way they controlled chosen ones in the past was by keeping them isolated, by making them feel alone, lost, and powerless. But now, something is shifting. The chosen ones are starting to find each other. They are connecting, sharing knowledge, and breaking free from the illusion. The silent war is no longer silent, and the more of us that awaken, the weaker their control becomes. This is why, now more than ever, they are desperate. They are throwing everything they have at you: distractions, fear tactics, division, even direct attacks. Because they know that if they lose control of you, they lose control of everything. But their greatest mistake: they underestimated you. They thought you would give up. They thought you would break. They thought you would stay asleep. But you didn't. And now, you are beginning to see the truth. You were never meant to disappear. You were never meant to be erased. You were meant to rise. The real question is, what happens when all the chosen ones rise together? Because once that happens, this war ends, and they lose. For centuries, the system has done everything in its power to keep you small, to keep you doubting yourself, to keep you from ever realizing the truth about who you really are. Because if you knew, if you truly understood the power within you, their entire control structure would collapse overnight. This isn't just about suppression. This isn't just about keeping you distracted or keeping you enslaved in the system. This is about keeping you from awakening something ancient, something unstoppable, something they fear more than anything else. You see, chosen ones are not like the rest of the population. You were born with something that others do not have: a divine spark, an energy, a force that makes you different. This isn't just some vague idea or spiritual philosophy. It's real, it's tangible, and they have known about it for centuries. Think about why the world is structured the way it is. Think about why certain individuals are targeted, why certain bloodlines are monitored, why certain people seem to experience struggle after struggle from the moment they are born. It's because they are watching you. They do not fear the average person. They do not fear the masses who follow orders, who stay within the system, who never question anything. Number their greatest fear has always been you. Because you have something that cannot be controlled. Something that, if fully activated, would make you unstoppable. And that's why their primary objective has always been to ensure that you never discover it. But here's the truth they never wanted you to know. The human mind is a gateway, and for chosen ones, this gateway is far more powerful than the average person can even comprehend. Your mind is not just a tool for thinking. analyzing, or processing the world around you. It is a transmitter and a receiver, a bridge between the physical and the unseen. And when properly activated, it has the ability to bend reality itself. This is why they have worked so hard to keep you in a low vibrational state. They flood your mind with fear, with stress, with doubt, because they know that the moment you step outside of that energy, your true abilities start to emerge. Have you ever noticed how, in moments of deep clarity, things seem to shift around you? How you can sense events before they happen? How you attract certain energies, certain opportunities, or certain people into your life in ways that defy logic? This is not random. You are not just a human being. You are a force of nature, and they have been studying people like you for generations. Ancient texts, secret societies, lost civilizations. Everything points to the fact that there have always been individuals who possess abilities far beyond what the average person is capable of. These individuals have been known by many names throughout history: prophets, mystics, sages, warriors of light. But in today's world, they are simply erased, ridiculed, and silenced. Because if you knew the full extent of what you could do, you would change everything. This is why certain knowledge has been hidden from the public. This is why ancient teachings, sacred texts, and esoteric wisdom have been locked away, reserved only for the elite. They teach their own how to harness energy, how to control reality, how to manipulate time and space itself, while feeding the masses a false version of reality, designed to keep them weak and powerless. But the chosen ones, they were never meant to stay asleep, even under the heaviest programming, even after years of conditioning. Something inside you has always been pushing to awaken. It is why you feel the way you do. It is why you see things others don't. It is why you feel an unshakable connection to something greater, even if you can't always explain what it is. And here's what they don't want you to know. Your thoughts create reality, not in a vague, wishful thinking way, but in a very real, very direct way. The energy you generate, the beliefs you hold, the focus you maintain, all of it sends out frequencies that shape the world around you. This is why they constantly bombard you with negativity, why they flood your mind with fear-based programming. Because if you ever stopped feeding into their illusion would cease to exist. Think about it. Everything in this world operates on energy. Everything has a frequency. And when enough chosen ones begin to shift their focus, to withdraw their attention from the system and direct it towards something greater, the entire foundation of control begins to break down. This is why they make you disappear, not physically, not in the obvious ways, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. They want you cut off from your power. They want you believing that you are alone, that your gifts are a curse instead of a blessing, that your intuition is paranoia, that your insights are delusions. But what if the very things they taught you to doubt were actually your greatest strengths? What if the visions you've had, the instincts you've felt, the dreams that refuse to leave you are all messages, warnings, a call to remember? Because make no mistake, you are here for a reason. Your presence is not an accident. The timing of your awakening is not random. Everything you have been through, every struggle, every loss, every painful moment was all part of a process, a refinement, a transformation. They wanted you to disappear. They wanted you to be forgotten. They wanted you to stay lost in the illusion. But instead, you are awakening. And that, more than anything else, is what they fear. Because when the chosen ones rise, the world changes. And right now, at this very moment, it is happening. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Because once you see the truth, there is no going back. From the moment you entered this world, there were forces working against you. Forces that never wanted you to realize who you truly are. This battle has never been about what you can see. It has always been about what lies beyond the surface, the hidden war that most people never even recognize. And yet, despite everything, despite every attempt to keep you in the dark, you are here, awakening, remembering, and breaking free. But do you truly understand how deep this goes? Do you fully grasp the extent of what they have done to erase you? Because this is not just about social control or economic systems or even politics. No, this is something far greater. This is about spiritual warfare, about energy, about the unseen forces that have been moving against you since before you were even born. The first thing they did was make you question yourself. They planted seeds of doubt in your mind before you even had the chance to understand your own nature. Think back to your childhood, the way you were made to feel different, the way you sensed things others didn't, the way your mind worked in ways that set you apart. That was not a coincidence. The chosen ones have always been marked, always been watched, always been targeted in ways that others would never notice. It starts with subtle conditioning, with parents who don't understand you, with a world that tells you that your intuition is wrong, that your visions are nothing more than imagination. They placed you in systems designed to strip you of your inner knowing, schools that forced you into conformity, environments that dulled your senses, numbed your spirit, and kept you locked in a cycle of self-doubt. But the real attack, the one that has been happening for generations, was far more insidious. They did not just try to limit your mind. They tried to cut you off from your power. They understood something that most people do not. The energy you hold, the light within you, the very essence of what makes you who you are, is something that cannot be controlled unless you allow it. So they used every method they could to make you believe you were powerless. They filled the world with distractions, with artificial desires, with illusions designed to keep you chasing things that do not matter, to keep you focused on survival rather than awakening. And the more you bought into their illusion, the more you became disconnected from the truth. And yet, something inside you never fully surrendered. That is what makes you different. That is what separates you from the rest. Despite every attempt to erase you, your soul refused to be silenced. And that is why they fear you. Because even after everything they have done, you are still here, and you're starting to see through the lies. But there is something you need to understand. This battle is not just about you. It is about something much larger. There is a reason why so many chosen ones have felt an overwhelming sense of isolation. A reason why you have always felt different, disconnected, like you do not belong. The truth is, you were never meant to fit into their system, because their system was built to contain you, to suppress you, to keep you from disrupting the order they have spent centuries constructing. And yet, despite all of their efforts, that system is now crumbling. The awakening is happening on a scale they never expected. And no matter what they do, they cannot stop it. They try to erase you by keeping you distracted, by keeping you locked in cycles of pain, by making sure you never fully recognized your worth. They made you question yourself, your path, your identity. They sent people into your life to break you, to make you believe that love was meant to be painful, that trust was dangerous, that your gifts were nothing more than a burden. They manipulated your emotions, twisting reality in ways that made you doubt your own experiences. They labeled you, categorized you, and boxed you into identities that were never yours to begin with. And when all of that failed, when you still refused to be controlled, they turned to their most desperate measures. They tried to erase your existence completely, not in the way you might think. They didn't need to remove you physically. That would be too obvious, too crude. Instead, they removed you from the narrative of history itself. They erased the knowledge that could have guided you, destroyed the teachings that could have awakened you, buried the ancient wisdom that once made the chosen ones the most powerful force on this planet. They rewrote reality, altering the past to control the future, distorting every truth that could have led you back to yourself. And yet, despite it all, you are here. You have found your way back, against all odds, against every obstacle they placed in your path. That is the one thing they never anticipated: the resilience of the chosen ones, the sheer, unstoppable force that refuses to be extinguished. They thought they could bury the truth, but the truth has a way of resurfacing. They thought they could erase you, but here you are, remembering, reclaiming, rising. But now that you see through the illusion, the real question becomes, what will you do next? Because knowledge alone is not enough. Awareness is only the first step. The true battle begins when you decide to step fully into your power, when you stop living as a shadow of yourself and start embracing the force that has always been within you. Because make no mistake, this is what they fear the most. Not your words, not your thoughts, but your actions. The moment you stop doubting yourself, the moment you stop allowing their system to dictate your reality, you become something they cannot control. And that is when everything changes. That is when their power begins to collapse. Because their power has never come from strength. It has only ever come from deception, from the belief that they are in control, from the illusion that you are weak. But once you break free from that illusion, once you see through the veil, they lose their grip entirely. That is why they are desperate. That is why the world is shifting in ways that seem chaotic, unpredictable. They are scrambling, trying to maintain control as more and more chosen ones awaken to their true nature. And no matter what they do, they cannot stop what is coming. You are never meant to disappear. You are never meant to be erased. You are meant to rise, to remember, to reclaim everything they tried to steal from you. And now that you have seen the truth, there is no going back. The time has come. The awakening is here. Now the only question is, are you ready? There comes a moment in every battle when the tide shifts, when the forces that once seemed invincible begin to crumble under the weight of their own lies. For centuries, the government and the hidden powers that control it have operated under the illusion that they could suppress the chosen ones, that they could erase them without a trace. They believed that by controlling information, by manipulating perception, and by rewriting history, they could prevent the awakening. But what they failed to understand, what they never anticipated, was the resilience of those who were meant to rise. They never expected that after all their efforts, after all the deceit, the chosen ones would still find a way to remember. And now, that moment of reckoning has arrived. At first, It happened in small waves, barely noticeable. The world around you felt different, as if something beneath the surface was shifting, something just out of reach. The illusions that once seemed so solid, so undeniable, began to crack. You started to question the narratives you had been fed your entire life, the systems you were told to trust, the authority figures who claimed to have your best interests at heart. The things that once seemed normal, the endless distractions, the empty promises of success, the fear-based control mechanisms, began to feel hollow, artificial. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the machinery behind the illusion. And the more you saw, the more impossible it became to unsee. This was not just a personal awakening. It was something much bigger, something that had been building for generations. It was the realization that everything, the governments, the corporations, the media, the entire structure of society, had been carefully designed not to empower, but to enslave. Every law, every policy, every crisis had been orchestrated to keep people in a state of dependency, to keep them distracted, afraid, and easily manipulated. The chosen ones, those who had always been different, were the greatest threat to the system because they had the power to break free. But breaking free was only the beginning. The real danger, the thing the government feared most, was what would happen when enough chosen ones awakened at the same time. They had tried everything to prevent this moment. They had infiltrated spiritual movements, corrupted religious institutions, and used the education system to program obedience from childhood. They poisoned the food, the water, the air, filling the world with toxins that dulled intuition and clouded the mind. They turned family members against each other, creating division where there should have been unity. They used every tool at their disposal to keep the chosen ones isolated, making them feel alone in their awareness, convincing them that they were crazy, that their insights were nothing more than paranoid delusions. But despite all of it, something inside you refused to be silenced. It was as if an ancient memory had been reawakened, a knowing that had always been there, but had been buried beneath layers of conditioning. It was not something you learned from a book or something someone told you. It was something you felt in your soul, something undeniable. And as you awakened, you realized that you were not alone. Others were waking up too, in every part of the world. People who had always felt like outsiders, like they didn't belong, suddenly finding each other, recognizing each other. The connections that had been severed by the system were being restored. And for the first time in a long time, the chosen ones were remembering who they were. This was the moment the government had tried to prevent at all costs. The event they had spent lifetimes preparing for, because they knew that once it happened, there would be no way to contain it. The illusions they had spent centuries constructing were unraveling, not because someone exposed them, but because they could no longer hold their weight. People were beginning to see through the lies, to recognize the patterns, to understand that everything they had been taught was a carefully crafted deception designed to keep them weak. And once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. They responded in the only way they knew how, with more control, more fear, more desperate attempts to keep people asleep. They flooded the media with distractions, engineered chaos to create confusion, manipulated financial systems to keep people struggling, all in an effort to prevent the inevitable. But it was already too late. The awakening had begun, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. For the chosen ones, this was the moment of decision. This was the point where everything changed, where the fear that had once held them back was replaced by something far stronger: purpose. The government had tried to make them disappear, but instead, they had made them stronger. Every challenge, every obstacle, every attempt to erase them had only forged them into something more powerful than before. The darkness that had been used against them had become their greatest teacher, showing them exactly how the system operated, revealing its weaknesses, its vulnerabilities. And now, they were ready to step into their true power. But this was not just about resistance. It was not about fighting against the system or seeking revenge. The real revolution was never about destruction. It was about creation. The chosen ones had not come here to tear down the old world. They had come to build something new. They had come to bring a level of consciousness that could not be manipulated, a way of being that could not be controlled. And that was the true reason the government had tried so hard to erase them, because they knew that once the chosen ones stepped into their power, the game would be over. The illusions would crumble, the control would collapse, the world would never be the same again. This was the moment they had feared all along. And this was the moment the chosen ones had been waiting for. The question was no longer about whether they would win. The question was how far they were willing to go to claim their destiny. Something profound happens when the oppressed refuse to stay silent, when those who were meant to be erased refuse to vanish. The very fabric of control begins to unravel. The government, the hidden powers, and the architects of this grand deception had long believed that they held the keys to every door, that they dictated the fate of every soul, and that they could mold reality itself to fit their desires. They underestimated one thing: the power of those who refused to forget. The chosen ones were never meant to conform to this world. They were never meant to live within its limitations, bound by laws that were not written for them, enslaved by a system that feared their very existence. The moment they realized this truth, the illusion of control collapsed. This was not a sudden event, but a force that had been building, unseen and unstoppable. It started with whispers, voices that spoke of something greater, a calling beyond what could be explained by logic or reason. For centuries, those whispers were drowned out, suffocated beneath propaganda, lost in the noise of a world designed to keep people distracted. But they could not be silenced forever. The chosen ones had begun to hear them again, and with every soul that remembered, the collective consciousness of those who had been oppressed grew stronger. They were no longer just individuals struggling against an unseen force. They had become something far greater, an unbreakable tide moving against the current of deception. The government had spent generations weaving a web of fear, ensuring that those who questioned the narrative were ridiculed, outcast, or worse, made to disappear. But what they failed to understand was that each act of suppression only fueled the fire of those who would not be erased. Every lie exposed, every secret uncovered, and every injustice witnessed became a catalyst for awakening. The chosen ones were no longer just watching from the sidelines, trapped in uncertainty. They were stepping forward, standing in their truth, and becoming the very force that the system had spent centuries trying to destroy. The battle was no longer one of physical strength, but of will. Who would break first? Those who lived in fear, or those who had embraced their destiny? And yet, even as the system crumbled, Even as the hidden hands of power found themselves unable to contain the rising force of awareness, they did not stop trying. They unleashed every last weapon in their arsenal: economic collapse, social division, engineered chaos. They twisted reality in desperate attempts to maintain their hold, hoping that the chosen ones would lose themselves in the confusion. But the ones who had seen through the first layer of deception could no longer be fooled. They recognized the game. They saw the patterns. They understood that the final act of control was not about physical enslavement, but about convincing them to enslave themselves, to believe that they were powerless, that resistance was futile, that they were alone. But they were not alone. They had never been alone. The realization spread like wildfire, igniting something that could no longer be controlled. Across the world, those who had once felt isolated in their awareness found each other. They formed connections that could not be severed, bonds that were stronger than any false reality the system had created. They did not need permission to step into their power, to reclaim their place in the grand design of existence. They had always known, deep within, that they were never meant to follow the rules of this world. They had come here to change them. The government had spent lifetimes trying to erase them, to write them out of history, to make them believe they never existed. But what they failed to understand was that destiny is not something that can be erased. It is written in the very fabric of the universe, encoded in the souls of those who were meant to awaken. The harder they tried to suppress it, the stronger it became. The more they attempted to erase the chosen ones, the more undeniable their existence became. This was not the end of their story. It was the beginning. The final truth that the government never wanted the world to know was this: the chosen ones were never victims. They were never powerless. They were not anomalies or mistakes in the system. They were the system's undoing. The very presence of their consciousness shattered the illusion that had kept humanity in chains for so long. They were the ones who could not be programmed, who could not be controlled, who saw through the deception and refused to participate in the lie. And now, they stood at the threshold of something far greater than the world had ever known, a reality shaped not by fear and oppression, but by the limitless potential of those who dared to remember who they truly were. The government had tried everything to make them disappear, but they had failed, and now nothing would ever be the same again.